Good evening, everyone. Normally, I have a sheet of prepared remarks to discuss how the meeting is going to go, and we're trying to locate that. So I think I will just. I've been doing this for a while, so I should remember most of it. So welcome to our meeting. Thank you for being here tonight. This is the Avon Advisory Plan Commission meeting, and we are going to be hearing several agenda items tonight. First of all, I would like to ask everyone to turn off your cell phones. All conversations should be taken outside, or put your cell phones on mute or vibrate. Any phone calls should definitely be taken outside, and if you need to talk about things, take them outside as well. The order of the meeting will be the petitioner will come forward first, and Paul, I'm going to need you to help me here, and we'll have 10 minutes to make their presentation. Well, before we do that, we will have a period where people can talk about things that are not on tonight's agenda. So if you want to say something about anything that's not already on the agenda, we will do that first, and then we'll close that section and move on to the agenda. The petitioner will speak first, and we'll have 10 minutes to speak, and they will be speaking to, yay, help. So, and they will be speaking, and let's see, where are we? This meeting is for the public record. And because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum. We've covered that. If we are interested in commenting during the public hearing portion of the commission's deliberations, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to the staff or to the petitioner. Your comments should relate directly to the case about which you're speaking. During the conduct of the public hearing portion of the commission's deliberations, the petitioner will have 10 minutes to present their case to the commission. Remonstrators will have a total of 10 minutes to present objections to the petition, and persons in support of the petition other than the petitioner will have another 10 minutes total to present support for the petition. And then finally, the petitioner will be able to close the public hearing portion of the presentation with a 5-minute rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed, no additional testimony will be heard unless it is solicited by the members of the commission during the question and answer phase of the commission's deliberations. Subdivision plat and development plan petitions are ministerial requests, which means that if the proposal meets the requirements set forth in the town's development ordinances, the Plan Commission must approve the request. In the interest of transparency, state law requires that the Plan Commission hold a public hearing, even if the development proposal must be approved. Responses to public comments and questions may be given once the public hearing portion is closed. We understand there may be several persons who wish to speak. In order to keep the meeting running in a timely fashion, we would request that you not repeat previous comments. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome to our meeting, and please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Now I'll do our roll call.
Susan?
Present.
Guggenberger?
Here.
Ransberg?
Here.
Kaufman?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
Pike? Here. Spencer? Spencer is absent.
We have a quorum. Okay, moving on to the approval of meeting minutes. This is for meeting minutes approval for the May 28th, 24 meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to read through the meeting minutes, have any suggested corrections, edits, misspellings, et cetera, et cetera?
Make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting minutes from May are approved and submitted. Now we move on to the public comment, bless you, public comment portion. This is the opportunity for anyone here to speak about anything that is not already on tonight's agenda. If it's on tonight's agenda, please wait for that item to come up. But if you'd like to speak about anything else, we have no control over the weather, just FYI. But if you'd like to speak to anything, now's your time to come forward and speak up. Anybody? Going once, going twice, the public hearing portion, public comment portion of the meeting is now closed. Have we had any requests for continuances or agenda modifications?
Thank you, Chairperson Rensburg, members of the commission. Staff would draw your attention to ZA 24-05 Silver Springs. For the record, this was formerly Oriole Grove. It is a request to rezone 45 acres north of County Road 200 North and west of County Road 900 East. Staff has been working for quite some time with the petitioner on making some substantial changes to this project. And we have asked for additional changes that they are working on. We've seen some of them, but not all of them yet. So in order to give them time to make additional revisions, staff is requesting a continuance to July 22nd. That would be without additional notice. The petitioner is here if you have any questions.
Mr. Taylor, is the number of continuances requested by staff, is there anyone that I know? Okay. And this is they continue before?
This is the first hearing for
This is
this.
the first, okay. There's no objections or discussion, I'll take a motion.
I move that we continue ZA 2405 to the July 22nd meeting.
I'll second.
Having heard a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to old business. Beginning with ZA 2404.
Okay, so petition 2404, which is known as Wawa, at the intersection of County Road 100 North and Dan Jones, or County Road 800 East. This was filed originally, I believe, in February, continued several times for various reasons, and has been amended one time. This request is to rezone a portion of the property to C1, 2.95 acres, and then the rest of it, 1.71 acres, to C2. No significant land use history on the property, and it's currently improved with single-family residences. These are the parcels of record. There are 4 of them. This one's a little bit hard to see on that screen, but the outline in white is the original rezoning request to C2 for Wawa, and then it was changed to Wawa plus an outlot. Then the blue area was added later in the process, and that is the area that's added in blue is 2 parcels, 2 residential parcels, and that area would be C1, along with the northern portion of the white area. The comprehensive plan for this area recommends neighborhood commercial retail uses. This is the comprehensive plan. The parcels out, the original parcel is outlined in red here, and then I did not include, but the other 2 parcels are right next to it there. And then the blue outline, that is the neighborhood commercial recommendation of the comprehensive plan. When you first saw this in March, when Ian was here, the staff was recommending approval, and it was because of the commercial recommendation of the comprehensive plan. I reevaluated that recommendation when I started. And the comprehensive plan separates its commercial recommendation into neighborhood and then general retail. The neighborhood retail is supposed to be in the immediate area adjacent to residential uses. 4 uses are to be available to immediate residential uses and not to draw customers from outside the area, or not to be for uses where it would be customers passing through the town on Dan Jones, for example. It's meant to be there and provide commercial uses for the immediate residences within a mile or two within the town. The ordinance goes on to separate and call C1 neighborhood commercial and C2 general retail. So there's, in both documents, it says neighborhood and then area or general. And then, in the comprehensive plan and then in the ordinance, it says neighborhood area, neighborhood area. There's a clear separation of them. Because of how close this is to residential uses and the concern for the residential or the additional houses going down 200 North of what they would eventually become if the commercial starts to go down like dominoes, that we thought that the C2 was too intense for this area, being across the street from 3 schools essentially, and adjacent to residential uses. We do have concerns about the 24-hour access, or 24-hour type of use that a gas station is. You will hear from the petitioner's representative tonight that it's a very nice and clean business, and we don't doubt that. But there's nothing in this proposal that, number one, requires it to be Wawa, requires that they're not going to sell it, next week, or in 10 years, if it's not doing great and it goes out, that it could be something else, C2, that maybe is not appropriate for this intersection. So the blanket of C2 on this parcel, we think is inappropriate based on the comprehensive plan and based on the surrounding uses, where C2 is not appropriate adjacent to these residential uses. C1 is the district within your ordinance that it intends to be adjacent to residential, not C2. So therefore, our staff did change the recommendation to one of denial for the C2 use for the gas station. We believe it is too intense for this intersection. Here's where the comprehensive plan defines the 2 districts and what should be within them. And I'll note that the area retail is intended to attract customers from within and outside of Avon. And the Wawa, I can assure you, is wanting to attract customers from a greater area than the immediate neighborhood. And again, what I stated earlier, the C1 and the C2, meeting the needs of the neighborhood versus meeting the needs of a market area. This is their original site plan, I should say. Or no, this is the current site plan. Wawa would be located on the southern part. Then there would be 2 outlots that would be able to be developed under C1 along 100 North. On this, I think I have it on the neck. On this map, the 2 outlots that don't show any development would be C1, and then the gas station itself would be C2. That is how it breaks out in the proposal they've presented to you. The rezoning criteria that you're to pay attention to when deciding whether to rezone a property, and again, these are to be considered as a whole, not that every single criteria needs to be met like a finding does, but these are the items that you are required to pay regard to. And we would suggest to you that, taken as a whole, that the rezoning criteria have not been met for the C2 district. Most importantly, that the comprehensive plan, it is not consistent with, The current character of the area is solely residential or institutional, being church, school, and residential. The use to the south, we would note that there is those mini storage units to the south. Ideally, I guess not ideally, but a mini warehouse business does not have the same type of impacts on surrounding residential that a gas station would. So if to say they're warehouses or mini warehouses next to residential, yes, ideally we wouldn't usually consider them appropriate next to residential, but you don't have people coming and going 24 hours a day all the time with lights, noise, traffic, that sort of thing. So did want to make that observation that is there, and that there is a use that is not consistent with residential in the area. Just want to make a point on that second item that there's been no commitments offered. Everything that's pointed out to you at presentation today, if it is important to you, would need to be formalized as a commitment in order to be enforceable by our staff. But in the end, staff is recommending that you recommend denial of this petition to the town council, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I have 3 questions. One, so correct me if I'm wrong. So it's in the UDO that neighborhood retail is defined as C1.
It says, yes, next to the state in C1 in the UDO, it says neighborhood commercial or neighborhood retail.
Okay. And then second question is, so then are they seeking C2 because that's the classification needed for a gas station? Why going for C2 versus C1? Why is the petitioner requesting a C2?
Gas stations are permitted in C2 and not in C1.
Okay, thank you. And then the storage unit adjacent, what is that? What's that zoned as?
It's zoned planned unit development, and it was, I don't know the history of it, but it's part of the overall development of residential and some commercial that hasn't been yet developed, but the storage units were the first business in there.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question too relating to the C1 and the C2 criterion. So this intersection is an intersection between 2 very busy thoroughfare streets. These are streets that are used a lot for people to get from one side or the other of the town. So why would it not be considered appropriate for this to be considered C2 to address the traveling public when we've got so much traffic going east and west and north and south at that intersection? What is it that makes, it seems to me like because of that particular intersection, that there is a lot of people traveling through who don't live in the area.
I don't know, I would agree with you on that. The C2 really takes in the heaviest of the commercial uses. C1 is not an office district. It still permits restaurants and drive-throughs. It still permits a lot of things. It's just that gas stations are pulled out, and I think appropriately because of their 24-hour operation and next to residential neighborhood.
I guess, well, so what is immediate neighborhood? Because I can think of all kinds of restaurants and other small retail things that would be in C1 that pull people from a long way away. So what is considered immediate neighborhood? Is there a geographical boundary?
Well, the ordinance and the comp plan talk about people within the town of Avon versus people traveling through Avon. So the immediate neighborhood, I would say a mile or 2 miles in every direction would be where you're drawing from. It would be uses that you would want to run out and go somewhere, not a draw. Like if you're going to a theater, you're willing to go a couple towns away, but not to go to a gas station or not to go to a fast food place. I mean, there are things that are right around you. I know I just said gas station, but it's meant to be drawing from outside of Avon versus the immediate neighborhood.
So Linda, are you saying that it's a destination? Like Costco is a destination, right? People
Correct.
go to places because they want to go to that place versus just driving through,
Right.
oh, there's something, I'll pick it up. But it's a destination location versus just a convenience.
Generally, area retail is meant to be drawing, again, from a larger area, so it is more of a destination commercial versus a drive-through. Gas stations, I believe, are pulled out and put into C2 because they have much more potential impact on neighboring uses. And this one is immediately adjacent to residential and to institutional uses.
Further questions for staff? Okay, we'll ask the petitioner to come forward.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is John Cross. I am the attorney for the petitioner. My address is 13 North State Street, Suite 241, Greenfield, Indiana. I am here to address specifically, let's see, specifically the interplay of the comprehensive plan and the unified zoning ordinance, which was discussed by the staff. Patrick O'Leary will speak next, more to the specifics of the Wawa brand and the proposed operations. To go off what Ms. Albrin was stating, the comprehensive plan currently reflects and recommends that the property be neighborhood retail. Neighborhood retail is defined as sites proposed for smaller commercial nodes with convenience retail. They are logically placed near existing and in future residential neighborhoods and connected to housing and schools for walkability. Typical uses to locate here include smaller grocers, specialty restaurants, pharmacy, boutique shops, and limited personal services. So neither the comprehensive plan nor the zoning ordinance expressly equate this neighborhood retail to any particular zoning district, in our opinion. And it's our opinion that this was intentionally done in order to allow flexibility and decision based on the proposed use and not to be rigidly adhered to any type of zoning classification. So the two applicable commercial zoning districts are C1 and C2. And in their entire definition, C1 zoning district is established to provide for the development of convenience businesses, uses geared to meeting the daily needs of residents living in adjacent residential neighborhoods. This district should be strategically located with access to minor arterial or major collector. The C2 zoning district is established to provide areas for general business activities geared to meet the needs of a community-wide market area. Activities established in this district are often large-scale uses located along minor arterial or major collectors. So again, the neighborhood retail recommendation definition includes smaller commercial nodes with convenience retail. This project, the Wawa development proposal, fits squarely within this definition. This isn't a box store. It's not a Walmart. It's not a Home Depot. Instead, it'll be a small convenience store, typical of a Wawa brand that'll be less than 6,400 square feet, which you'll hear more details about. The phrase convenience retail in neighborhood retail is also perfectly suited for Wawa. It'll provide convenient fueling resource. It'd be both a convenience store and a restaurant featuring fresh, made-to-order food and beverages, as well as delivery and curbside options. It's a perfectly convenient location for customers to make purchases of essentials and restaurant-quality food and drinks without having to travel further away to the big box stores like the local Meijer, Walmart, or other supermarkets. So when you look at what this actual proposed use is going to be, it meets two of the four specific examples given in neighborhood retail in that definition, one being smaller grocers and two being a specialty restaurant. The use is also consistent with the nearby development in the area. You heard how there's already commercial development there. There's a self-storage facility, a small strip center, and a senior living community that were approved there just a few years ago. So this proposed development does fit neatly into the current land and will not impact the neighborhood retail recommendation, so it's consistent with the plan. To the extent that there would be any sort of concern about setting a precedent or requested commitments, Again, since the plan was originally submitted, the petitioner has added that C1 buffer that is going to be adjacent to the residential area. So it's not going to be C2 next to residential. The C2 is not next to residential. It's going to go C2, then C1 to provide a buffer, and then residential. So this isn't just permitting any C2 in a neighborhood retail area. And secondly, the petitioners here tonight are willing to consider any sort of reasonable commitments limiting the C2 uses so long as it would be consistent with their proposed use in the Wawa brand. So that way you would have an ability to prevent more intensive uses like you heard Ms. Algren speak of. And finally, do want to point out there, which was stated that there, regarding the updated staff report interpretation, again, we want to point out that this proposal, as it was originally provided without the C1 buffer, was previously favorably viewed by the prior staff. This project was brought over a year ago to Avon. We were told by then Director Bill Peebles that the issue of the interplay between the neighborhood retail and C2 was acceptable then, again, without the C1 buffer. Then the new plan director, Ian Laura, was hired, and he too made the exact same interpretation. So both of these plan directors were hired by Avon, and you've relied on them for their expertise. So we believe that in the matter of this sort of interpretation, you have the flexibility to make your own determination in light of the conflicting interpretations provided. And we do strongly believe that this very limited C2 use falls squarely within the purview of the neighborhood retail uses. Thank you. Patrick?
I've got a lot of ground to cover on this, so I'm going to jump right in and try to get it all under my time limit here. So excellence does not happen by accident. Forbes and Harvard Business Review have recognized Wawa's operational excellence. They've been voted the #1 sandwich in the United States and have more Tesla chargers than any other retailer. Keep in mind that Wawa only operates in 8 states. 7 years versus 7 months. Wawa offers careers, not jobs. Their benefits are unrivaled, highlighted by the ESOP, which allows store managers to retire millionaires. The Wawa Foundation has donated $150 million since 2014 and will bring their charitable giving to Avon. We have heard the neighbors' concerns and your concerns. The revised site plan creates a C1 lot between Wawa and the residences. The C2 does not border any residential, which was, I think, accidentally said earlier. We do not border any residential. This ensures the future development along County Road 100 will be C1. We have agreed to install a berm, fencing, and trees on the eastern property line and a fence behind Wawa to screen headlights. Additionally, we have committed to 0 light on residential property, restricted delivery hours, restricted audio at gas pumps, and restricted hours for trash pickup. Much has been made about the neighborhood setting of this location, and I really would like to take a closer look. While the site is generally surrounded by neighborhoods, the immediate location is conducive to the zoning we are requesting. Dan Jones, which is currently being widened to 4 lanes, and County Road 100 are significant arterial roads. The property is surrounded by institutional uses and commercial zoning. Furthermore, with the revised site plan, we have support from every property owner surrounding the project and no objection from Avon Public Schools. The only residence bordering this project has sent a letter of support in favor of the project, and that resident is present here tonight. Wawa is a neighborhood store. I'm having a hard time getting that through, but they are. I could show you hundreds of examples. Time won't permit, but here are several. These are all locations that are 24-hour operations located significantly closer to residential than we are proposing. Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Tampa, Florida, Port St. Lucie, Florida, Lauderhill, Florida. I happened to develop this site. The city of Lauderhill understood the Wawa brand, and they literally modified their ordinance to make sure that Wawa could land in this location. And then the last one on this is Chichester, Pennsylvania, where you're going to see Wawa surrounded by residential homes with cross access to an elementary school. A lot of faith in the brand to do that. I'm puzzled by staff's latest revision to the original and positive recommendation. Keep in mind, the original positive recommendation before it was changed was for a significantly inferior plan. Concern with lights. Wawa light will not impact any residential property. There's a C1 lot between Wawa and the nearest residence, who, by the way, is in favor of the project. Noise. County Road 100 creates more noise for the residents than Wawa ever will, and we have restricted audio and delivery hours. Comprehensive land use plan. Wawa is perfectly aligned with two of the four suggested uses. I consider that consistent with the plan, and furthermore, two of the three planners that have worked on this project thought so as well. Traffic. The traffic report is crystal clear. There are no traffic issues as a result of this project at this intersection. The revised plan is 100% in conformance with the city ordinance, including 24-hour operation, and consistent with the comprehensive land use plan in our opinion. Jeff Gorneau addresses 24-hour operation in the attached letter. Mr. Gorneau was a 36-year veteran of law enforcement with Michigan State Police,
You have 1 minute.
including the governor's personal detail and the Department of Homeland Security. He asserts that 24-hour operation does not change the character of an area and does not bring more crime. Jerry Harder is a 30-year first responder and Avon resident. He speaks to the need of night shift workforce and this location between two area hospitals. In closing, this project is a value add for Avon. It's a quality brand that stands alone. Wawa is its own category. Wawa serves Avon residents' daily needs without having to navigate US 36. Wawa serves the underserved night shift workers, nurses, doctors, police, and fire. It brings new jobs, more taxes. The project meets all conditions of the ordinance. We believe is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan, and the surrounding property owners unanimously support this project.
Thank you.
My staff's available, my folks are here to answer any questions you may have.
Sure. Questions for the petitioner?
I've got two. Thanks for the presentation.
Actually,
Earlier you shared that the school had no objections. Did they state they had no objections, or they just didn't respond?
Well, no, they did not respond, but they're typically not going to come out in favor. I've never seen in public schools come out in favor. They stated they had no objections.
Okay, thanks. And then if I were to Google Wawa, are there any locations I would find that do have restricted hours less than 24 hours?
Yeah, this was done at the meeting. So yeah, there are some, but those are legacy stores. No new Wawa stores are open for 24-hour. In the previous meeting, it was asked by Patrick Moon, Wawa representative. He did go back and he didn't realize I'd already gone down that road, knowing the objection to 24-hour operation, and all new stores are 24-hour operation. It's part of Wawa, their consistency, their brand, reliability.
But you do have some locations, legacy locations that are not open 24 hours, correct?
There are, yes.
I would like you to ask you to go, if you would get the clicker again, to go back through to the locations. If you could click through the existing examples you had a little more slowly, because, okay, that one. Okay. All right, thank you. Where's this one at? Port St. Lucie. Okay. And the next one? Okay. Thank you.
While you're there, if you're done, Paul, go ahead. Can you go back to these? Do you know what the square footage of those Wawas are in these locations?
I can't speak to Philadelphia or New Jersey, although that looks like a very big store. But if you keep going, Connor, that is in the 5,900 to 6,500 range.
and what is the square footage of what you're proposing?
Or, yeah, 6,300. This would be the same. That one I can't speak to again. It's the Mid-Atlantic states I'm not as familiar with.
And then yours said ours is 6372, is that what?
Correct.
What is are all your stores within the same parameters, or do you have like tiers of like your a mini Wawa, a regular, a supersized Wawa? Are they all pretty much within the same footprint?
Pretty much the same, kind of an ever growing. They get a little bigger. So I've been developing Wawas for 15 years. The original stores we were doing were 5,600 and change. And now we're, 6,400. Evolution of, but these aren't giant differences. These are minor tweaks in the way they're handling refrigeration or different kiosks inside the store, so to speak. So Wawa does not have a mini store. Getting into Miami was very difficult for them because they couldn't amass the land they needed. Part of the brand is the circulation, the space, the size, it's very comfortable. They're very user friendly. So, and there's no giant format either. They are discussing or experimenting with some high-speed diesel stores, but those would be on highways only, and that's only in the concept stage here.
One more follow-up question. And how many gas islands are planned for this?
So we're proposing 8, pumps with 16 stations, one on each side.
Okay.
In reviewing some of the other projects that you're doing in central Indiana, as I said, you're proposing 6372 square footage on a 1.71 acre of land, but you've got other ones, Greenwood, Brownsburg, Westfield, 5,919 square feet on bigger parcels of land. So why would you want to put a bigger store on a smaller postal stamp?
1.7, I wouldn't describe as a postage stamp, but
Well, compared to the other ones I'm looking at.
that side, I mean, we've got decent coverage ratios and parking and everything works great here in Avon. But to answer the question, it really was just an evolution of the prototype of Wawa. So from the time we brought out the first ones, they made a couple of tweaks to that building, and with each tweak, if it isn't approved, they try to get the little larger one brought in.
So if we came down to making a proposal, would you accept 5,919 square feet as the size of the building to put on this site?
I'd have to talk to Wawa about, that. I can't on my own approve it, but we'd be open to the discussion. I guess want to understand what's being gained, what's being lost.
Well, I don't think that, I like Wawa. I don't think it's the right location. So if you're going to put the biggest building you have on that 1.71 acres, I don't think that's right. But if you want to put a smaller one, then I might consider it.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what it comes down to, then we'd be open to that.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead and have anyone who has signed up to remonstrate. Do we have any names signed up?
We do.
I don't know if you already took the paper, but I put my name.
I have it.
Is that- okay.
First one is Victoria Davis.
Sorry.
I've never used this. Does this work? Hi, I'm Victoria Davis. I am a resident here of Avon, and I live on Dan Jones and 100. And I will tell you that I like Wawas. I go to Florida all the time, but I do not like this location. I go up and down 74 to Ronald Reagan every single day, and there's not one gas station. I promise you, a Wawa would be wonderful right on Ronald Reagan. And they are trying to recruit people to come to this area. I have a 6-page document press release showing how great they are and why they're coming. They are recruiting people. They want people to come from the hospital. The hospital is 6 blocks north. So I am very much against this because they will bring down that traffic. They want to call it convenience, but that is already intersection busy with schools, drop-offs, pickups. Every day, people walk their dogs, they ride their bikes. In town of Avon, even on your sign, is about a walkable, bikeable community. We need to keep it that way. This is too much for this area. I'm sorry, that's how I feel about it. So I'm going to go through a couple other points. Increase of fire explosion. I'm sure they have all the stuff on there, but there is 2 schools and a church there. Noise and light, they talked about that. Loss of property value, that's my biggest concern. But the air quality, everyone who goes to a gas station understands that you smell gas. There is something called benzene, which is a chemical that can affect your central nervous system, respiratory, and immune system. This chemical has been known to cause brain damage, pneumonia, leukemia. Don't forget, we have 2 schools and a church and a bunch of communities. I don't want that every single day when we're driving by. Traffic issues, we've already addressed that. It's already busy. Yes, I understand that they are putting in, people are kind of going this way because of all the traffic on US 36. But I'm telling you, most of those are people who are trying to get home like myself. And we go through that roundabout and we're just trying to keep our kids safe. And it's already going too fast. We need more police officers in that intersection to slow people down. And I know they're saying that they're going to take down the lights, but crime always increases when you have a 24-hour store. We have no place else to go is what's going to happen. So in further ado, having a gas station in this corner will not only impact the quality of life for us, but the quality of the life of the future residents. It will never be the same. Once they put concrete on this piece of land, it'll never be the same. And you all you talked about it earlier, there's no guarantee in 10 years it's going to be Wawa. So there are gas stations at 100 and 267. That's just a block down. People can go there. There are all kinds of gas stations on Rockville Road. The only place I disagree with is having it on this corner. Thank you.
Next.
David Derry.
David Derry, 925 North County Road, 800 East, Avon. Couple things. They showed the pictures of a lot of the stores basically surrounded within a residential section. And I believe that fully encompasses your 1-2 mile residential radius of that you're wanting to see for businesses. The storage buildings to the south, they do have 24-hour access. You punch in your code, that gate opens up for you, 24 hours. The traffic's already an issue regardless. And I know that y'all realized that years ago because you started Dan Jones widening a few years ago. So there's already a lot of traffic. So Wawa's not going to be bringing any more traffic. They'll just take advantage perhaps of the traffic that's there. Not to mention it hopefully might slow down that roundabout because everybody, as far as noise, right now, it's full of noise. It's loud pipes, seriously loud pipes, and all these muscle cars racing off of that roundabout. Until a noise ordinance is enacted by the council and enforced by the police department, you're always going to have loud pipes and a lot of noise coming off that roundabout. And they're always racing to the 2-lane to the 1-lane. It's a race every time, horns, all the time. Then as far as crime, I don't know what a Wawa would bring crime-wise that a little coffee shop or a little residential grocery store or any other business would bring. I just don't see that bringing any more crime in there. And I just don't see that happening. So anyway, I guess that's all I have is so I fully support the project. I think it would be a great addition to Avon. And like I say, there's a lot of traffic going through all the time anyway. So might as well bring some of that out of county money into Hendricks County or out of Avon money into Avon. Bring that money into Avon. Help it grow. And as far as the gas station down the road, Avon has got chicken joints side by side, tire shops side by side. We're flooded with tire shops and chicken joints. So I don't see that gas station on my thing. So, all right. So anyway, I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie Scott?
Stephanie Scott at 8063 East County Road 100 North. I'm just a little dumbfounded as far as why this is getting so much pushback. My property abuts the storage unit, and that whole thing went through so smooth. And people have to think, we're the ones that live there. And you talk about lights and trash. Well, any place is going to, the church has lights and trash. The schools have lights and trash. There's so much light now, it shines on my house. So no one's concerned about the issues now. You're not concerned about my mailbox getting run over all the time because they want to crowd and play chicken. I live there. I've lived there 55 years. That was our family home. So this isn't an easy decision. But I just feel like once you place that neighborhood retail on our area, you know, you have people calling you all the time. Eventually, they're going to widen 10th Street. I don't want to be those houses on Dan Jones that I have known all my life and have a road sitting at my front door. Dave's property, you know, the more that they just whittle away at your property, it's not fair to the property owners. And I have an opportunity with a wonderful company that people love Wawa's. And you talk about the storage unit, that's like industrial zoning, and that's not a problem. Speedway gas station at 267 and 100 North, that's a C1 zoned. It's been there 30 years. I don't think people are dying of cancer, and it's a thriving neighborhood, and that is right next to a subdivision. And that is zone C1 and C2, right next to them. This isn't touching anybody. And you're talking about schools and churches, they're not even there all the time. So part of it's empty time. Summer, school's out. And this is a wonderful company for the town of Avon. And I just don't understand why there's so much pushback. And you know, down at 74, where that's not their idea. They want to be in a neighborhood, and everything's contradiction. You want, okay, pharmacies, all that, that's not feasible. You know, there's not going to be anybody starting pharmacies that small. They get robbed all the time. CVS, the bank gets robbed. So this is safe. It was promised to us, as far as the storage unit, there would be a security person there all the time. There's not. People go in and out there 2 o'clock in the morning. So there were things that were promised, and there wasn't any buffering. They tore into my tree line, and there wasn't any concerns for me then. And the Wawa has gone beyond, the developer gone beyond buffering this away from, you're talking about one house that may be in view of it. This isn't a subdivision. It's not going right in the middle of a subdivision. The houses at the end won't even know it's there. And you can't tell someone pulling into a parking lot whether it's a Wawa traffic or traffic on the road. And they're not drawing. No one's going to come from Brownsburg there. There's gas stations there. And I do want to correct that. This is a convenient mart with a fueling station. We keep using the term gas station. We all know what a gas service station is in the old days. Mechanics, servicing your car. That's not what this is. And that falls under the C2. C1 is a convenient mart as the Speedway gas station is zoned. And that's been there 30 years. There's no problems. And this would be something that you gas for your mower, you want to go, right there. You want to go get a pop. It is for a neighborhood. It's not designed for people in Plainfield. So I really think you need to, in all respect, really start dividing out and not contradicting, what you want. Say you want boutiques. Well, maybe people love that boutique and they come from Plainfield and Brownsburg and all over. It's the same difference. It's like you're wanting business there, and this is all inclusive. This is everything. This is a grocer. You can get food. You can get gas for your lawnmower. You can go get a pop or a coffee walking. It is a neighborhood. And I just respectfully, there's a lot of time and money that's been put into this. And I wouldn't go into it, but I kept getting approvals. And I just feel it's a little irresponsible now all of a sudden, it's cost people a lot of money. And all of a sudden we're just saying no. And I don't understand some of the things that you're talking about here. And I think you're meshing things and you're not sorting them out because you're making way too much into it. It's a neighborhood convenient mart for the neighborhood. It's not going to affect, there's no residents. There's no one that's fighting this.
I don't mean to cut you off, but we have other people who want to
That's
speak
okay.
as well.
That's okay. So is
Okay.
my time up?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, I didn't hear you. You're supposed to tell me.
Well,
But please.
you feel very strongly, and so I didn't want to try to.
Oh, no, and you're fine.
Okay,
Thank you for the respect
Thank you
of
for your
that.
co-
But
for your comment.
just, I think it's a wonderful company.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Next.
Nobody else has signed up. There might be others in the audience.
Is there anybody else present who would like to come and speak on this agenda item? Yes, sir. Please give your name and your address.
Hi, Brandon Wilson, 8093 East County Road 100 North. So we're the add-on to this project. And I just have a couple quick points. I thought those were all good points that Stephanie mentioned. I think a couple things to just keep in mind. In 2017, the town of Avon changed that property, not the property owners. So you guys changed what that comprehensive plan was to be. You guys changed it from residential to commercial. So in 2017, that happened. So some could argue that we've been limited to sell our properties from a residential standpoint during that time. And now we finally have somebody, a good company coming into Avon with a good brand that's willing to develop this property or at least start the project, right? Somebody has to start the project at some point and they're willing to do so. And they keep adding and adding and adding based on the feedback they're getting. And I think it's to a point that if we push this group out of town, who knows when the next group's going to come into town? And I think you're, consistently restricting the owners of those properties. And we'll kind of limit our potential to even sell our property. Which way do you go, right? People coming in are going to say, this is a commercial area. Why do we want to buy this property residentially? They're not going to, right? And they're going to immediately think that the price tag's too high to buy it from a commercial standpoint. So I would say probably taking that into consideration. I've heard Mr. Taylor on several occasions mention, that we can't totally restrict everybody around when you guys are the ones kind of setting what these, the zoning and things should be in these areas. So that's all I had. Something just to keep in mind
we have to be able to do something one way or another with those properties. And I think we have a good brand with Wawa. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else present who would like to speak on this particular agenda item? Okay. Discussion. We had rebuttal. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah, right. Would Wawa like to rebut? Nothing? Okay. Okay, discussion.
I'm open to the project. What does give me pause are two things. One, with Greg, the size of the project on this parcel. And secondly, the hours. You know, when I think of resident or neighborhood residential, what are the term of art? Neighborhood retail. I'd be interested in the staff's knowledge of other neighborhood retail within our community, but you know, my basic understanding is typically those are not 24 hours, right? And so one of the things that Wawa, the petitioner, points out as a strength is that it's very positive for first responders, local hospitals and whatnot. Well, that then makes it a destination. So at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., people are going to come because they know it's open and it's, you know, has a good reputation. So that then starts to take it out, for me, out of neighborhood retail into, again, a destination commercial location, right? You're not just passing through, you're going there specifically at 2 a.m. because you know you can get X, Y, and Z. And so that I would say is a big concern for me. They do have limitations in their legacy sites, so they do in fact do that. I know it's not their preference, but if they were open to commitments restricting their hours, that would make me much more comfortable.
I was very impressed, Mr. Wilson. If you're not an attorney, you might want to consider going back to law school, because I was very impressed by the letter that was presented by you and your wife. And I found it persuasive, and I also found the letter from Basel Law Offices, specifically from Raymond Basel, talking about their interpretation of the C1, C2 zoning, which is contrary to current staff recommendation, but lines up with prior staff recommendations. I found those two particular submissions to be persuasive from getting into the nuts and bolts of it. We also have several submissions here from surrounding neighbors, including 2 property owners who support this. I think what we're getting into is there's obviously an interpretation difference as to what C1 and C2 mean. And I'm very pleased to see that Wawa went out of their way to reach out to the property owners to make accommodations relating to lights and noise. And I hate those gas pump television things anyway. So, you know, feel free to turn those off all the time if you'd like to. But I mean, I think that shows good faith. And as has been pointing out, something's going to have to go there. We've also seen documentation that, or assertions that 24-hour does not increase crime. I'm not a crime expert, so I can't speak to that, but I think there's persuasive arguments on both ways, both sides here. But I was very persuaded, or found the letter from Basel Law Office and from Mr. Wilson and his wife to be persuasive in terms of just the technicalities of, does this meet the ordinances?
So, and I do agree with the letter that we got from Brandon Wilson and his wife here. I also remember the letter that we got from them when we first had this, and it seemed to have a different tenor to it as far as like, not against Wawa, but more concerned about the impact on the property. And now, if I understand it, this now is part of the property that will be acquired to create the C1 district there. So I take that in consideration, but I'm like, I mean, Wawa is a great company. It'd be great to have them in Avon. And I look at this as the wrong location for 24/7. So yes, Dan Jones is going to be widened. I'm not sure when it's going to be widened going north. But it'll bring traffic in there. We got 2 schools and a church. While all the surrounding properties, and the school never says, I think it was stated, they don't say they're for, they just don't say they're against. So they're really non-committal.
Right.
So we're making a decision that's not just for Wawa, but anything that goes on that property in the future. So if we are even thinking about considering passing on a favorable condition or recommendation to the council, then I would want to see that we go through every permitted use for C2 and limit what can be in C2, because if we don't, then any of those permitted uses can go in that zoning for C2 and C1. So it's not just Wawa, it's the future of that area. And again, I think 24/7 is not the right thing for that area.
You bring up a good point. I have a question for the petitioner. What is the average lifespan of a Wawa, just on average? I mean, when you put in Wawa locations, how long do they stay Wawa locations before they are either sold or become something else?
Wawa are all corporate run. They're not franchisees. And with the exception of some downtown Philadelphia store concepts where they went in and tried to do like some kiosks, I don't know of a single Wawa that's ever closed. Wawa's AAA credit rating, there is likely to be here 10 years, 20 years from now as any company you could possibly think of.
Okay.
Do Wawas typically sign a 20-year land lease?
Yes, Wawa's a 20-year ground lease, and they have 6 5-year options. So they're making a 50-year commitment to a location.
Any further discussion?
Well, I agree with Paul. I mean, if we're going to move forward with any type of recommendation, we need to put in place on these outlots that we have no idea what's going to go there, prohibitive uses. And if we want to make a recommendation with 24/7, the size of the building, the prohibitive uses, I think that's what we need to do.
I think they said at a previous meeting that 24/7 was, asking it to not be 24/7 is a deal killer, so we know that.
Well, I think.
That's a deal breaker for me then.
That's a
Yeah,
deal breaker.
and
That's a deal
that's
breaker for
something that
me.
we decide, not they
No,
decide.
I'm just saying we asked them and that was their response.
Yeah, that,
I think when you look around the area, and I've looked at this, and the Speedway is open 24/7, I get that. I believe when we expand Dan Jones, we're buying one of the properties south. So I think that only leaves one other property south of the storage place. The town owns the property on the corner, and the Scott property is going to be bought. So the property then on properties, the landowners on 100 North, that's really your residential neighborhood. But I think as we go, and they're going to sell it commercial. And then you got your school and your church, and you're going to expand the road. And they put the buffers in. So I think they've done a lot of things to make this appealing, but I still believe that we need to look at 24/7, size of the building, and prohibitive uses on the outlots. And all we're doing is making a favorable, unfavorable, or no recommendation to the council. But that's my input.
I do have a question for Dan. Can there be a condition that the zoning amendment recommendation be tied to Wawa development, so that if the zoning was changed and then it was determined that the petitioner is going to, or whoever's going to sell the property to a different company, that the zoning would revert back to ag.
No, we deal with land use, not users. So classifications of businesses, you could ask for commitments of that nature, but not a condition. So there are some commitments that are specific. I know about them because they ended up in litigation. So I would know about that. But that is very usual because we're not, I guess I should say, the town council who makes the final decision. They're dealing with land use. And so you can go to your land use table under C2 and redline it and draw types of uses that you don't want. But unless the petitioner would agree to such a commitment, I would not recommend it. I think it's not appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion? I feel like we've been here before.
So a motion with, I would move that we move forward with a positive recommendation to the town council with the following commitments. And this is going to be a rough draft. So restriction on hours, operating hours. Do we need to be prescriptive, Dan, in this, at this stage when it comes to making a recommendation to the town council, or can it be general like that? Do I need to spell out the hours for the commitment, or can it be just general?
It can be whatever, you want. But again, remember, a commitment is something you ask the petitioner to agree to. A condition is something you impose upon an approval. You're making a recommendation that a condition be imposed.
And what were you saying a moment ago about conditions versus we can impose or add a condition as part of our recommendation?
You
correct?
certainly may, but there's a difference. So you could make a list of things you'd like to see, and you can ask the petitioner if they would agree. And if they say yes, that's a commitment. If you don't want to ask them, or you don't, I think you should ask them for their position on any condition you would oppose.
Okay.
Because if they'll agree to it, then that will be more clear. It will help the town council understand the petitioner's position.
Gotcha. Thanks, Dan. Rather than trying to build it on the fly, I'd be interested in the commission's then thoughts on conditions as to the size, operating hours, and any other conditions it wants to impose. So we can flesh that out now and then verbalize it in a motion. Does that make sense?
I think the only thing I would be interested in seeing would be restrictions on C2, is eliminating C2 uses. I don't think it's our place to tell businesses how to operate. And
Well, we do that in ordinances, so we do. I mean, we don't as a body, but the town does.
Right. And that's the town does. But I don't know that it's our job necessarily to tell people what hours they should be open.
So I think I'll take an opposite view, because we did that with Ziggy, and we impose a restriction on operating hours there. So I think it is within our responsibility to lay that out. So if we think that there should be a limit on operating hours, that we ought to either get the commitment or impose that condition.
But Siggy had a history in other stores of having those limitations. So I would say it's not quite apples and oranges.
I still think that, and I think we ought to, as Dan said, talk to the petitioner about operating hours.
I think Ziggy was also a commitment, not a condition, if I recall right.
Right.
They were agreeable to it.
They were
Because
agreeable.
that was their normal model.
Right.
Again, I'm not going to make a motion without that condition. So if I mean, if there's not an appetite for that, then someone else needs to make a motion. But if there is an appetite for it, then we can craft it, but.
Well, I think this would be a good time to ask the petitioner to come forward because I'd like to ask the question around operating hours. We've had this discussion in previous meetings here. And I know for two of us, there's a concern about the operating hours that it'd be 24/7. And we'd like to see that not be 24/7.
I'd love the answer to be yes, but it isn't. It's not. Wawa operates all of their new stores, the vast majority of the stores. The only stores that are not 24-hour are legacy stores. Part of their operations is consistency, trust. They like serving these underserved communities. You are sitting right between two hospitals, I'll remind you. So the suggestion that there isn't a need for this, for the traffic that's sitting there today, there is. If you took just 10% of the traffic that's on that road, you probably have 170 cars. That's 170 people that would possibly stop in and grab a coffee on their way home from an airport or picking a kid up. I'm picking my son up Wednesday, late. We'll stop somewhere. And if there was a convenient Wawa near my home, I'd stop there. And 24-hour operation, I mean, the most vulnerable a business is going to be when it's closed. 24-hour operations does not increase crime. You're better off without it.
I don't dispute that. I'm not questioning that.
And there's no residents near here.
So if we would impose a condition of operating hours, you're saying that you could not move forward then because it has to be a 24/7.
It would kill this deal for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
And just a reminder, we have three options. We can make a motion to move forward. We can make a motion to say no. We can motion to say no recommendation, either way.
So if we put a condition on that, then I think what we just heard from the petitioner, they wouldn't move forward with this.
Well, ultimately, it's not our decision. I mean, that would go to the town council. Yeah.
Right. Well, I want to do our job and forward them something to act on. It may come back to us or it may not come back to us.
Would you like to
That's
make
still-
a motion?
Well, I'm not favorable for 24/7 in that location. I'd be okay with the footprint. I know Greg's concerned about the size of the building. That doesn't bother me as much as the 24/7. I'm like Mason, I'd be interested in the rest of the commission thoughts on operating hours.
I'd be interested too.
Do we need to ask the petitioner for a commitment that we make whatever recommendations and we put in these conditions and they decide, nope, we're not going to build there? I think Mr. Taylor said that zoning goes with the property, not with the petitioner. But if they would make a commitment that says, if we don't build here, nobody like us can build there, can we do that?
No, that's not what I was asked. What I was asked is, could you ask for commitment that it only be a Wawa? What you said is something very different. I would never recommend that.
That's why you're the attorney.
You should listen to the attorney like Mr. Wilson. He's my favorite remonstrator right now. Yeah. But again, that's problematic. The case that talked about this it was about a 27-year-old commitment that this location could only be a Walgreens. And the court said, well, that really can't be what they meant, because who knows, after so long, things change. And the court found the commitments, I think there were like 26 commitments, that they were ambiguous about it forever being one use. And so I think that, as Paul mentioned, I think that the better approach is to eliminate the uses you don't want. If you're going to make a favorable recommendation, then you're saying it would be okay to be a convenience store or under certain conditions. And I would also say that there are 5 factors, and I thought Linda did a good job talking about this, but there are 2 thoughtful opinions about neighborhood commercial. The petitioners have their kind of opinion, and your staff has theirs as well. But that focuses on the recommendations of the future land use map and the comprehensive plan, which is one of 5 criteria. And so if you look at the other 4 criteria, and it's in your staff report, and you start to look at character and current conditions, highest and best use, impact on fair market values, and responsible development and growth, those are the other 4. And Linda said it exactly right. Your decision is supposed to be grounded upon the totality of that picture, not any one criteria controls. Years ago, there were several decisions where they said, well, we wanted to approve it, but the comp plan prevented that. And the court said, no, that's not your job. You look at it all together and just see, when you take all 5 factors into account, which way does it lean? Favorable, unfavorable for the Plan Commission. So again, your staff analyzed that well. You've heard comment from both the petitioner and remonstrators tonight about these other issues as well. But I think in making your recommendation, I would invite you to just make sure you're looking at all 5. And if you feel that, if half of you feel the staff is right on what the comp plan says and the other half don't, then you can still make a decision because you got 4 other factors you might agree on. So I'd remind you of that also.
Do we want to talk about the C2 limitations that's been bandied about? Perhaps that might be the, Linda, can you just review those for us? The C2 uses.
Would it be okay if I touched on the C2 uses that I thought would be concerning rather than all of the C2 uses?
Well, if we're going to talk about eliminating certain C2 uses, we probably need to hear all of them. How many are there?
30 or so. Well, I mean, yeah, about 30.
Well, if you
mean,
can
like
just
a
list them
nursing home.
and we can,
I mean, I think there's absolute value. I think we talked about in the past, having like a list of those on our desks moving forward so that we have those readily available. But again, just a different approach. Like, if the threshold question is, if there's most of us that are opposed because of size or hours, then we may not even get to the threshold question or to the question about limited use, right? But if there is enough commission members that are receptive, then there is value. But in the interest of time, going through all of them, and there's still major concerns about hours and lot size, then it may be a ineffective exercise. Does that make sense?
then we need to have a motion.
Well, I'd like to walk us through the criterion, like Dan was saying too, and kind of talk to what staff has in their proposal. And I know we've talked about previous planning directors. No, those were previous. We're in the now, so we're going with what we have that's been put forward by our current planning department and planning director.
That starts on page 6 of the report.
Criterion 1, basically comprehensive plan is adopted and amended from time to time, and the proposed land use staff's position is not consistent with that designation. And I think that's what I'm saying, and I think Mason's saying is not consistent because of 24/7 doesn't fit that. Having C2 there. Criterion 2, while there is a commercial storage business to the south, and it's already there, the existing storage use to the south should not guide the development of the subject property. I agree with that. Criterion 3, the most desirable use for land in each zoning district is adapted, and the proposed use is not in line with the most desirable use for that site. Again, making it C2 versus C1. And I agree with that. I think that's something that's what is going back and forth in our discussion. Criterion 4, the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. The proposed rezone would have minimal impact on the property values throughout the jurisdiction. I don't think we've heard anybody, remonstrators indicate that they think their property would be impacted, and I would agree with staff's position on that. Then criterion 5, responsible development growth. In staff's position being the development of this corner property, a C2 use would lead to requests for future development of the parcels to the east as higher intensity uses. Perhaps. I think that's something that, yes, we have to consider, but then again, they're asking for C1. So would that continue to be C1? So I kind of understand the point there, but I'm not sure if that would be the case. But based off, I don't think all 5 criterion have been met. From my point of view, criterion 1 has not been met. And criterion 3 for sure. Those 2 are the ones. So I would, at this point, and I'll make a motion for us to act on, but it would be an unfavorable recommendation. So I'll lay that out there for discussion.
Based on what's been presented and unfortunately the position of the petitioner with regard to the 24/7, I'd have to second that.
So are you making a motion?
I will make a motion, ZA 2404 Wawa amended. I move that we forward an unfavorable recommendation to the town council for ZA 2404 Wawa amended, a zoning map amendment to rezone 1.71 acres from AG to C2 and to rezone 2.95 acres from AG to C1, since it has not satisfied all the requirements for a zoning map amendment under state law, subject to the commitments outlined within the staff report on file.
Second.
Having heard a motion in a second, let's take a vote.
Susan?
4.
Gutenberg?
4.
Ransford?
Against?
Kaufman?
Against.
Reed?
4.
Pike? 4.
Motion carries. Unfavorable recommendation will be forwarded to the town council for final consideration.
I was. So that's the problem. I was kind of.
Let's take a 5-minute break. Recess.
we gotta hold the line, man. And I applaud us for doing that. I just hope it stays that way.
Let it go. Tina,
We can start. I'm okay with it.
Are you presenting?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, here we go. We're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to resume with new business, ZA 2406.
Thank you, President Ransberg, members of the commission. Just as a housekeeping item here, I believe on your agendas, it may have shown these two items under old business, but they should have been listed under new business, both ZA 2406 and DPR 2408. And specifically on ZA 2406, on your agenda, it indicates that it's a 14.24 acre rezoning. That should read 21.4 acres. It does reflect that in the staff report, and it did reflect that in the legal notices that were published and mailed out. So there should be no issues there. I think that typo occurred because there are two parcels in the rezoning, one of which is 14 plus acres and the other 7 plus acres to constitute the full 21.4 acres.
Sure. Before we get started on this case, I just did want to add that I neglected to talk about a case that was inadvertently sent and mailed notice for a case that's going to be heard at next month's meeting. It was actually sent for this month's meeting and it's not on our agenda. So if there's anybody here for Easton Gray or wanted to comment on anything for Easton Gray, it's not being heard tonight. It will be heard at the July 22nd meeting at 6:30. That's what you're here for. And I do apologize for that. It was a miscommunication with the petitioner that sent out the notice.
Thank you.
Okay. ZA 2406 is a zoning map amendment to rezone 21.4 acres from R2 to the INST or institutional land use category. This is specifically to allow for park uses. We're not aware of any significant land use history with the site. It is located at 875 South County Road 800 East, which is essentially the northeast corner of Dan Jones Road and 100 South. The surrounding uses are an unimproved wooded parcel to the east, which I believe is owned by the Central Indiana Land Trust. Single-family dwellings are predominant to the north, west, and south. There is an access point to Pine Tree Elementary School across Dan Jones Road to the west. There's also a small memorial park there on the northwest corner of Dan Jones and 100. And there's also a coffee shop on the southeast corner of that intersection, which you can see on the map here. And the site is, again, comprised of two parcels outlined in black with the star in the middle there. And here's an aerial view of the site, which is essentially unimproved. What you actually see there on the west end of the site near Dan Jones Road is staging and materials for the Dan Jones Road project, which has been ongoing. This is the master plan that's been proposed with a rezoning to the institutional category. As part of that rezoning, you would be asked to approve this conceptual master plan, which lays out generally the uses that would go on the site. And then if this is approved, in the future, there would not be the requirement that you would typically have in other zoning districts for development plan approvals to come back through each time one of the proposed improvements on the site would need to be permitted. So with the proposed master plan being approved, potentially with this rezoning, the staff would be able to administratively review those plans instead of having a development plan approval come before you. Staff is recommending approval of this, subject to the following condition, which is that a 60-foot half right-of-way where less than that is existing be dedicated along the two abutting streets. There is, as you're aware, ongoing project going on there, but in talking with the Public Works Director, he thought it would be prudent to get the additional right-of-way that hasn't yet been dedicated for potential future improvements there. As was just spoken about in your previous case, as you're aware, there are 5 criteria to consider in a rezoning. The comprehensive plan recommends, it supports the existing residential zoning of the property. We do believe that rezoning this to institutional use, specifically for parkland, would be compatible with the plan, with the comprehensive plan, because the comprehensive plan does not seek to identify all the most appropriate locations for parks to locate in the future. And parks are considered compatible with, not just compatible with, but also essential and integral to residential neighborhoods. So we do believe it would be compatible with the plan, as well as being complementary to the current conditions of the area, which is predominantly residential. We do believe that adding a park would be the most desirable use for this land. And we do believe that park facilities help maintain property values, not only in the neighborhood, but throughout the town. And that thus this would be a necessary component of responsible development and growth. So with that, we are recommending that you forward this to council with a favorable recommendation, subject to the one condition indicated in the staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
What was the impetus for, what drove the decision to turn this land into parkland versus going ahead and using it for residential?
I think that's a question that could probably be better addressed by the Parks Director when she speaks.
Okay.
It mentions in the information here that a lighting intent plan has been submitted with the proposed master plan. I'm kind of curious a little bit about the lighting. What, I don't actually see that. Is that somewhere in here?
We didn't include that in the report, but they did include a plan showing, excuse me, I believe that, and again, Shelby can speak to this probably more than I can, but we did have a plan submit. I think that what I was going to say that she could speak more to is where lighting is proposed. From my recollection, it's the only area that's proposed to be lighted right now is the parking lot. And we did get a plan showing that it complies with the ordinance limitations on the amount of lighting. So.
Okay, I'll probably ask again later. I'm just kind of curious. We spent quite a bit of time talking about that with the Ziggy and the overflow lighting and that kind of thing. So I'm just curious how this compares. Thanks.
So I want to make sure that as I was looking at this and didn't miss it, once this moves forward, then if it's a rezone, we'll hear again a master plan at some point, or will that not come before us?
No, this master plan that's included is what would be approved if you forward this with a favorable recommendation and or the town council approves the zoning map amendment. This would be approved.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions for staff? We ask the petitioner to come forward.
Everybody's so tall. I always have to move this down. Good evening. I'm Shelby Pride. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director here for the town of Avon. As staff did an excellent job, thank you, Paul, introducing that. We are asking to rezone this parcel at 875 South County Road 800 East. We lovingly call it the Burnett property right now. Who knows what it will be named, if it will stay that name in the future. To answer your question about lighting, it would be just shelter. If you go back to the master plan, you can see a small shelter with a small maintenance bay on it. That would be just like our shelters up here at Town Hall Park. It's on a switch. So if somebody which the parks are open dawn to dusk. So if someone does need that, they go up and push the button and it's on for a certain time period. So that should help with the lighting issue. Hopefully it wouldn't be going off at all hours of the night for that. And then parking areas, obviously working with staff to make sure it's adequate. Again, this is the master plan, so each phase is not quite planned out completely, but we will make sure 100% to go through the lighting plan and make sure everything's appropriate. As staff said, the property is currently zoned R2. It's unimproved right now, with the exception of the Dan Jones widening project is using it as their construction space right now, part of it. It's 21.4 acres, and as staff said, the adjacent wooded area is the Burnett Woods Nature Preserve, currently owned by the Central Indiana Land Trust. I will defer to Ryan Cannon, town manager, on your question because the property was purchased before I got here. So I'm not sure the answer to your question about why it's park versus residential. Obviously, I'm voting for parks.
Well, I think if we remember, somebody wanted to put self-storage units there at one time and other things there at one time, and we said no, and I don't know if that's when the town decided to buy it or not. And when it was acquired by the town, the vision was to create a park area there setting. So I think the other thing that Shelby probably hasn't shown is this property then goes behind the woods of the Central Indiana Land Trust and goes east behind the Light and Life Church. So all that land behind the church out to here is part of this designation, I'm assuming.
Are you talking about the parcel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's included in there. It's right there.
So, okay, looks like you got it. Mhm.
Yeah. And again, as staff said, zoning this institutional would give us the ability to take the master plan to the council, and then with approval of that, then we would work phase by phase with staff internally. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Petitioner?
For my own edification, so as you mentioned, parks are dawn to dusk. What, I mean, are the trails closed after hours? Is there gates, or is it just an honor system with regard to it being closed?
It's mostly an honor system. We don't have lights throughout the park, so it would be, I mean, I would not recommend being out. In this particular park, Avon Town Hall Park, we do have gates on the north end that we open and close morning and night. For this particular park, we've talked about gated access. We're not sure if it would be okay. Staffing wise with this, we're not sure if we'll have staff there during operating hours of the park to open that gate. So once we get more into that and understand what we're working with as far as what's needed staff wise at this park, that could come into play. But dawn to dusk, so our park hours do vary. My groundskeeping staff vary their hours between coming in at 6 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. in the wintertime when the sun rises. Welcome.
Any further questions for staff or for petitioner? Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anybody who would like to speak as to this agenda item? Okay, would the petitioner like to rebut the non-spoken comments? Thank you. Discussion.
I think that this is a great addition to the town. I wish I could remember, Dave, why it went from development to parks, but I think Greg talked about what was looked at some point. And I think for that corner, having a park that ties into Burnett Woods or whatever future name this might be is going to be a great amenity to Avon. So I'm definitely for this. And while I'm talking here, just going through the criterion, I think staff's done a great job of laying out how each of the criterion are addressed and that each of the criterion are met. I would agree with that.
Hendricks County has a wonderful park system. I think if we look at, especially on the eastern half of Hendricks County, the county has really, and the towns in the county have really made that a big part of our focus. And I'm glad that Avon's going to be adding to that. So.
I agree. I think it's a great location. I've been looking forward to that park for a few years now.
Any further discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion that we forward a favorable recommendation for ZA 24-06 Burnett Park. Favorable recommendation of the town council. Burnett Park, a zoning map amendment to rezone 21.4 acres from R2 to INST, since it has satisfied all the requirements for a zoning map amendment under state law, subject to the commitments outlined within the staff report on file.
I'll second.
Having heard a motion in a second, we'll take a vote.
For.
Gutenberg,
For.
Ransberg,
4.
Hoffman,
4.
Reed,
4.
Pike, 4.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Move on to our last agenda item, DPR 2408.
Thank you again, President Ransberg and members of the commission. DPR 2408 Bellwood Amenity Center is a request for approval of a development plan to approve a new amenity center for a residential subdivision, including in-ground swimming pools, a restroom building, playground, and a surface parking lot. The address of the parcel is 7683 Allesley Drive. This is a new street that may or may not show up on a map, depending on where you're looking, which would be in section 3 of the Bellwood subdivision. It is just a little under an acre, and the subdivision is zoned R2. It received preliminary plat approval in 2021, was revised in 2022, and received final plat approval early this year. It is located along the south. The whole Bellwood subdivision is located, as you may be aware, along the south side of County Road 100, just a block or so west of Dan Jones Road. This is a site plan of the amenity center. And just as a side note, I'm not sure this may be the first time one of these has come before you. I know that the regulations in the ordinance for amenity centers are relatively new. But yeah, the site plan shows what's labeled as a pool house, which I believe would just basically have restrooms, maybe changing area. On the northwest part of the site there, you can see the main swimming pool and the kiddie pool to the south and east there. There is a parking lot, and then to the far east is a playground. Just to show you a little bit of, well, there's a landscape plan. Oh, I thought we had a sheet showing some of the playground details in here. But the newer section in the ordinance that regulates amenity centers has requirements for what constitutes a different type of amenity center based on the size of a residential subdivision and which amenities can be put in to meet those requirements. We did review this. It does meet all the requirements for the size of the subdivision, the playground equipment. There's minimum standards for the type of apparatus that they have on the playground, making sure that there are enough of them to meet the needs of the neighborhood, and that there are both apparatus for younger children and as well as a little bit older kids.
Could I
We-
jump in and ask a question?
Sure.
So on the staff report, this indicates an address of 7683 Owlesley Drive. But on that map, it didn't have that drive. Wessel and Markston or something.
Which one are we looking?
If you go back to these two. All right.
I think Owlesley is the street at the top of the page that's going east-west, and it's just not shown there. It's kind of cut off, and as the
Okay, then
road
it
then
turns.
curves to go south, it turns into Marston.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So we are recommending approval of this, subject to, those first three conditions are fairly standard conditions for a development plan approval. I want to back up here just to show, I didn't go over this. So they're required to landscape around the perimeter of the building, the pool, basically the structures and the parking lot. This is the initial landscape plan that came in. We did ask for a revised landscape plan, which is why there's a fourth condition, so that we would have landscaping in accordance with the ordinance, screening the parking lot both to the north and the south. We did receive on, I guess, Friday afternoon, and that's not to say it came in late. Our comments didn't probably get to the petitioner as timely as we would have liked. But they did submit this revised plan on Friday that shows landscaping to the north and south. It also appears to show that the parking space at the northeast, I don't know if you're looking that way. So this parking space at the northeast corner appears that it encroaches just a little into the required front yard setback, which is not permitted by ordinance. So we only got to review this today, and I sent comments to the petitioner late this afternoon, but I don't know that they were able to see them. So I did speak to somebody in the audience that's with the petitioner, so they can address this when they come up. But hopefully, we feel like they should be able to revise this plan fairly easily. They might need to lose one parking space in order to push that northeasternmost spot out of the front yard setback. Again, that's this spot right here.
Would that be the preference as opposed to asking for a waiver, since it looks like it's just a,
Well, in addition to that, so there's the second issue that when they added this proposed landscaping down here, they only put it at the end of the parking rows. But the ordinance actually does require that you have a continuous hedge. It specifically calls out a continuous hedge to shield headlight glare from adjoining properties. So we also made, that comment to them, which again, they may not have gotten our email late this afternoon. So they can, comment on that. But so if they had to move this up a little bit to add landscaping right here, that would be another reason why that one parking space at the northeast corner would have to go. They could probably shift the whole western row up without having a problem, because that landscaping can go up into the front yard setback, but the parking spaces can't. Because of the way the road curves here, they have a greater setback on the west side than they do on the east side there. So for those reasons, we're recommending approval, and we would just have that fourth condition that a revised site/landscape plan be submitted indicating compliance with the landscaping along the perimeter. And obviously they would need to, comply with that front yard setback as well. But we do think that's probably something that can fairly easily be revised, possibly losing one parking space, and that we could approve that administratively after this hearing.
So I'm a little confused because on the proposed motion, it says approval of a waiver, but that's not the action I'm seeing on the report.
My apologies. That should just say approval of a development plan review, and the waiver should not be there. I was using the template from last month's document where the waivers were included. My
Sure.
apologies.
I think we've already morphed into staff questions. Can I ask the questions, all right, or do we need to?
No, go
have them?
ahead. That's, we're doing staff, so.
Did you all, are there any safety concerns from the staff? I'm just looking at it, I noticed that, so the parking lot is in between the playground and the pool, and there doesn't appear to be any sort of like sidewalk that connects the two. I'm just naturally thinking, oh, you may have kids running from the playground to the pool back, and they're crossing a parking lot. Did that come up in any of your discussions with the petitioner?
That is, it's a good consideration. It's not one that we considered when we reviewed this, and there's not a requirement in the ordinance to do so.
Right.
So it would be hard for us to impose that.
Right. Thanks for that feedback. Yeah, that was one thing that just jumped out at me, so thanks.
Any further questions for staff? If not, we ask the petitioner to come forward.
Kyle Icorn, HWC Engineering. I'm the civil engineer for the project, so I think staff did a good job of covering the
Please
project.
give us the address, please.
Oh, sorry. Kyle Icorn, HWC Engineering, 135 North Pennsylvania Street, Suite 2800, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Yeah, staff did a great job of summarizing the project here. It's within the Bellwood community that's under construction now, and so this is a pool house which has restrooms, changing areas, swimming pool, parking lot, and playground. It was kind of drainage and all that was taken into consideration when we developed the subdivision, and so that was all accommodated. And so I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Like I said, we're working with staff to kind of resolve any last minute, changes. And so I think to resolve their comments, we will eliminate that parking spot in the corner, shift the lot up so we can add that additional landscaping and be in compliance with the ordinance.
So the one question I have for petitioner and then for staff, if we were to attach a commitment or condition to extend the sidewalk so it wrapped around so that children didn't have to cross the parking lot to get from one to the other, how badly would that mess up things?
I mean, so I guess we have a drainage easement down there that's necessary for the storm sewer.
Mm-hmm.
So, if having that sidewalk along the edge of that easement is acceptable, I think we could put that in. That's fine.
On the south, so connecting out, so it looks like the sidewalk runs from north down to south, and then if we were to connect it going east to the park, would that potentially be
I mean, it
feasible?
would probably we have landscaping there too, so I'm not for sure.
Yeah, that's what that's where the staff would come in.
There is sidewalk along the subdivision street. So, if you're at the pool, you have to leave the pool out the front door.
Mm.
So you're going to be on the street. So the natural way to get to the playground, I guess, would be to, we could add sidewalk from the subdivision street up to the playground, maybe to kind of have kids go out to the sidewalk and around.
Yeah, I was just thinking, again, there's nothing in the code, but if there was a way to mitigate the risk of the parking lot, then, that'd be a win.
mean, to the point that's being made here, and I'm glad you pointed out, if you have to exit through the pool house, from the pool area, then having some striping, like sidewalk striping across the parking lot to indicate that it is a crosswalk with appropriate signage, because I think that's an important thing that Mason has brought up here, is safety, and just trying to make sure that we have a safe environment for, going to have kids there, and they're going to go from probably the pool to the playground or back and forth.
They're going to run through the parking lot. They're not going to look both ways. And
So to have some sort of indication there that, I mean, if we,
Like across the apron of where the entrance is there, to maybe stripe it.
right,
Looks like there's a circled A there.
Yeah, that's indicating the ADA compliance, but we can make sure that there's
Yeah.
some striping there.
so you'd be okay with that condition?
Yeah, that's fine.
look at the sidewalk there now with kids. Are they going to use it?
Well, exactly. Like, again, like whether they use it or not, that's, and ultimately, like as a parent, right, you're responsible, right? So, if we can, if we can add stripes and it saves one life or injury, then I think, it's potentially worth it. So.
Question I have, was this pool, clubhouse, playground all part of the original development when you started the project?
So when this project first started, there were 3 lots here. And so Lennar elected to remove those and add the amenity early on in the process. So
Okay.
at the very beginning, these were 3 lots, but soon after that, they elected to add this.
Could you please step forward just to make sure that you're being
Yeah,
heard?
so
by
this
the
was
microphone?
added to the project fairly early on in the process during section 1, so.
So you've already started one phase of this. This is not going in that phase, is it?
No,
It's going
the
in-
phase in construction is to the west, and so this is in the part that hasn't been built yet, so.
Okay. The other question I have is, like this past week, it was hot, steamy. You're going to have a lot of people at the pool. I think it was 15 total parking spaces. Is that going to be enough?
Based on, so this is we've done this similar in other communities, and that parking seems to be sufficient in other communities. So.
What
A lot of
about
people walk.
Okay, and then what about the bike racks? If it's in a neighborhood, kids are going to ride their bikes to this location.
Yeah, so we have added at staff's recommendation some parking for bikes up near the entrance.
It looks like there's 4.
Yeah, two of the hoops.
Again, is that enough? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, how many bikes can you attach to 2 of those hoops? I don't know how big those, 2 each.
4.
So 4 total.
Yeah.
So
I think that number was given by staff. Is that?
Yeah, from an ordinance standpoint, that would meet the requirement. There's not a specific requirement for bike parking for amenity centers. I mean, that's certainly something we could look at in the future. It's basically based on the amount of parking spaces for vehicles that you have, but obviously a use like this might make use of a little bit more than your average development, like a commercial development. But the 4 spaces that they're providing, it's my recollection that actually would exceed. I think the requirement only was 2 spaces. Unless it was 2 racks. I'm pretty sure it's 2 spaces. So by providing 2 racks, you should be able to park 4 bikes there. So it at least meets if it not exceeds the standard we have in the ordinance right now.
thank you.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody here who'd like to speak on this agenda item? You can come and speak to the agenda item, but you're not allowed to ask questions of the petitioner. You can come and this is not the time to ask questions of the petitioner. This is the time to speak as to your opinion one way or the other.
You could come up and and make a
You
comment
can make a comment, yeah.
that is in form of a question, and then we can consider that in our discussion.
Yeah, he can't answer that question. Right.
Whatever you do, don't.
Right.
Name and address.
Give
Laura,
your name and address, please.
Laura Helton. I live in Pine Tree Estates at 1084 Sequoia Trail. So I back up. Unfortunately, my vision didn't allow me, and I asked to borrow a map, but I still couldn't quite tell where Pine Tree Estates was located. And so that's not a question, it's a statement that I couldn't find where I live on the map. And then my other statement would be, is section 3 in the middle of the development? That's a question. Well, you get the gist of it. Sorry. I think I'm the only Pine Tree Estates person that's here, so. I look at that model, it's very nice. Sorry, I don't know the protocol.
You're fine. You're fine. Okay. Rebuttal from the petitioner?
I can provide some, so, yeah, you see the property there, and so the open field is essentially, the west half of that open field is section 2, and you can see section 1, and the southern part is under construction. So section 3 is essentially the east half of that field. And this amenity area is separated from Pine Tree Estates by the lots that back up to Pine Tree Estates. So you would come out of Pine Tree Estates to a T intersection and then turn right, and that would put you on the road that wraps around to the amenity center. So I don't know if that helps explain the location.
Discussion?
I appreciate the presentation. I like Paul's suggestion of a painted crosswalk that, help mitigate any potential incidents. So it seemed like the petitioner was agreeable to that. So if we did make a favorable recommendation, I'd ask whoever makes it to add that as a condition. But again, I appreciate the petitioner's openness with that.
I think the question came up about just the location of the amenity center, and look for the developer to identify the best location for what they're developing, and that's why they probably positioned it in the middle or close to the middle of the development. It makes it easy to get to. So that's something that I look for the developer, the best use of that property. So, did you see the location in relation to Pine Tree, your Pine?
I'm sorry, but I can barely see anything other than the big rectangle. So, no, if someone could just say,
Use the-
right here, that would help.
Yeah, right here.
And that's Sequoia.
Oh, that's it.
That north stop, that vertical is Sequoia Trail.
So what is this?
It's a commitment.
You're right, I was getting ready.
Request, there's a compliant DPR in front of you, so any motion to approve would be made subject to the commitment of the petitioner to provide a crosswalk striping on the front.
Got that.
And we've also had staff request that they comply with an updated.
Correct, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
remind the commission, we're not imposing a condition that would be appropriate. Petitioner has made a commitment.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay.
An important distinction.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah, I was going to point that out again.
Discussion. Any further discussion, I should say. If there's no further discussion, let's entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve DPR 2408 Bellwood Amenity Center, a development plan review to allow for the development of a new amenity center, including in-ground swimming pools, a restroom building, a playground, and a surface parking lot, subject to the commitments proposed by staff within the May 28, 2024 Plan Commission meeting presentation along with the additional commitment of striping will be made on the driveway to indicate a crosswalk. Since it has satisfied all the requirements for a development plan review under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
Do we hear a second?
Can I make a suggestion regarding that, just for the record?
Sure.
I see the report notes May 28th. Legally, we need to have June 24th in there, do we not? Since this wasn't heard last month at all.
I will modify my motion that subject to the commitments proposed by staff within the
June
June
21st,
24th,
24th.
2024 Plan Commission meeting presentation.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And if I might just apologize for the incorrect date there. And also just want to clarify that staff's request in the staff report is for 4 conditions. So I do believe the motion should be with 4 conditions plus the commitment made by the petitioner.
Paul, would you like to amend your motion?
I'm going to look at Dan and make sure that, because we talked about conditions and commitments, so.
To the extent that, say, the landscape design is not compliant, then you can impose a condition, conditions corrected, but not just the crosswalk, the striping is what I was concerned.
Okay, sorry.
I agree.
So I will amend, I will amend my motion to subject to the conditions proposed by staff within the June 24, 2024 Plan Commission meeting presentation.
I'll second.
Could I just ask one more question too then? Is this a favorable or unfavorable to the town council?
It doesn't go to the town council.
Okay.
You decide this.
That's fine.
So this is an approval. It's as proposed.
Any more discussion on the motion?
Clarify, add the 4 conditions, the 1 commitment, correct?
Correct.
Which is the commitment?
Okay, so I heard a motion and a second to approve DPR 2408 with 4 conditions and 1 commitment added tonight by the petitioner. And I
Let's take a
will,
roll call.
Zuzen,
4.
Guggenberger,
4.
Ransberg,
4.
Kaufman,
4.
Reed,
4.
Pike.
Motion carries. Oh, okay. Do we have any committee reports?
Redevelopment, in addition to invoice approvals, we also had Dan Jones widening update and also 100 South update. And also County Road 900 East and Angelina Way roundabout update.
Okay. There was no BZA meeting this month. Any other reports from any other committees?
Nope.
I declare this meeting adjourned.